Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first night of the People of the Power panel, Power of the People panel. I am so excited for our conversation tonight. I am so excited about all the work that we're doing over the next few weeks. I am so excited about talking about how we are all playing a part to build a better future for our country. So, my name is Stefan Bradbury. I am the founder of W2AA America. We are a social welfare organization guaranteed to fight for every single day Black liberation. We are focused on uplifting Black voices. And most importantly, we are committed to making sure that Black people are not left out of the conversation about making this country live up to all of its greatest ideals. So I'm really excited about our panel tonight. We have put together some amazing people to talk about where we are as a country and where they see us going. So I'm going to introduce every single person on our panel, and then we're going to jump into conversation. So the first person I want to introduce, he is the first and youngest mayor in Talladega, Alabama, in the last century at 29 years old. His work focuses on breaking past the status quo of the South that ignores the poor, the disenfranchised, and the hurting. Mayor Tim, how are you doing?
I'm blessed, man. How are you?
You know, I could say the same thing. We're living in this day and age with Donald Trump, President of the United States. All we can say is that we're alive. Next up, we have advocate and community change agent Russell Boyd the third, girl. Russell
Don't
Boyd
wish
the
that on me.
second.
Don't wish that on me.
Russell is a graduate of the George Washington University Graduate School of Political Management and the current national field organizer for the NAACP Youth and College Division. Russell, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Blessed and highly favored, as the church folk would say.
Okay, wait, we're bringing in the spirit.
Period.
Listen, I absolutely love it. Up next, we have someone who I got a chance to meet one day randomly in the Library of Congress cafeteria. And ever since then, I've literally been completely obsessed. Jaria is a passionate advocate attacking issues that are affecting children and families. She is currently pursuing a law degree and a master's of science in social work at the University of Texas at Austin. Jaria, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you so much for having me, Stefan.
I'm so excited to have you here.
We met that one day because it was completely random. Shout out to Mariah.
Right? It was so random. Okay, so up next is a civic engagement and international rights advocate, Elijah Eli Miller. Eli is a second-year international student at Texas State University. How are you doing, Eli?
I'm doing great. I'm really looking forward to dive into this conversation with y'all, but thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited. I think one of the reasons why I was so fired up to have this conversation was because of a conversation you and I had months ago when Joe Biden had just kind of broken through as the presumptive nominee. So I'm really excited to see where we've, come to in the last few months.
Right.
And so last, but certainly not least, we have blogger, podcaster, digital content creator, Mariah Morrison. Mariah currently serves as the Vice President of Communications for the W2AA America Network. She is a native of North Carolina. She currently lives here in DC with her little cutie dog. Mariah, how you doing?
Hey y'all, just glad to be on here, talking about democratic issues. This is a very pivotal time in our system. Our democratic system obviously is failing. So I can't wait to, give some hot takes and, talk, and, of course, hear from all the esteemed panelists and hear what y'all have to say. We're excited to be here.
Yes.
I didn't really plan what to say, so hopefully that wasn't too rambling.
No, it wasn't. So listen, y'all. Y'all know there is an economic, healthcare, and racial crisis facing the country. Those are the top 3 out of a million, right? So my first question for y'all is, what is your voting issue? What is the thing that has you on fire to participate in politics right now? Let's go ahead and start with Eli. What are you feeling?
I guess my biggest concern is making sure we're getting adequate representation in our different identities that we might hold. So specifically now with, W2AA America, thinking about Black issues, looking through that lens, is making sure that not only do we have representation, but we have adequate policy that is put in place to advocate for us and to better our community. It's one thing to have a Black vice president, but what does that say? What is that doing? What's happening to better advocate for us? That's what I'm concerned about, and that's why I'm engaged in this upcoming election.
Absolutely. Daria, right now, the conversation about getting folks back to work, getting children back to school, a lot of it is centered on the simple fact that school offers parents childcare, right? So does that influence the way that you're introducing or interacting with politics right now at all?
I think it definitely does. I think there's a big push for appreciation for teachers because they are realizing what teachers are really having to go through in the classroom. And I'm glad that you asked this question, because I was going to say education, because it's impacted by the health sector, it's impacted by the workplace because their parents have to go back to school. And we also have to realize the divide that is happening right now that is impacting Black and brown children more than any other demographic. So when you look at that, I think it's important to take that into consideration when you're looking at, okay, what are, my top issues, because they're interwoven in so many different ways, but definitely education for me.
Absolutely. And so Tim, as a mayor, as as this young, fresh Black guy in Southern politics, not only are you going to the ballot box for yourself, but you're also a good temperature and barometer of what's happening on the ground in your community. So what is the thing driving you to the poll?
There's a whole lot of stuff going on. You think about COVID-19 response, you think about immigration, you think about civil unrest, you think about economic instability. I think the thing that's most pressing for me is competent leadership. I'm so tired of, just seeing all the tweets and the seeing on, different news stations, the comments that he makes to women and to minorities and to people who are different ability. It's just, it's kind of sickening. You don't expect to see that from your president, especially not somebody that's supposed to be leading the free world. So for me, I'm really just looking for somebody that I can respect in the White House.
Mariah, with you being a person who's worked in Democratic politics for a while, as a person who's done digital content strategy, do you agree with Tim that the tweets, that's the thing that we really, that's foolish, and that's the one thing that we need to get past? Because I guarantee Joe Biden is not going to tweet the same as, Donald Trump.
Well, of course, you rarely ever see Donald Trump tweeting or posting from his official account, because there are rules about what you can and cannot say on those official accounts. So I think maybe even tightening, I guess you can't necessarily tell officials what they can and cannot post on their unofficial accounts, but maybe holding the president to a higher standard or having some other level of accountability, because he was on there calling Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas. What did he say about Kamala?
She's a nasty woman.
Right? Like, he's on there saying all these things where on an official account, like, for example, when I was with Climate Crisis, I couldn't tweet President Trump is stupid. Like, it's things like that. He is a nasty man. Like, you can't do stuff like that. So I think there should definitely be a standard that the president should be held to officially and unofficially in his communications.
Yeah, absolutely. Russ, what are you feeling?
I'm definitely feeling it's kind of hard. It's an equally yoked combination of education and the environment. But I think I'm going to have to go with the environment on this one, seeing how it's so intersectional on every issue. When we think about economic instability, when we think about those folks who are differently able, when we think about, our justice system, when we think about all of these issues that our community faces, especially our Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities, just knowing that the environment and our the way we tackle the environment and environmental issues are going to essentially affect those areas. So I think that we have to have a person who's going to aggressively talk about the environment, talk about the issues that are at hand, and going to actively engage not only environmental folks, but those of us on the ground, those of us in communities who are feeling the grunt of that. We think of COVID-19 and the environmental factors that played, and especially in Black communities and poor communities. It's just so much. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing a very thorough and a thorough environmental plan in this whatever administration being actively engaged in ensuring that those issues are tackled.
Yeah, absolutely. So one word from every person, because the convention's about to start. What's the emotion you have right now? If you can only have one word towards the state of politics. We'll start with Jaria and make our way around.
Sorry, I was trying to get off mute. I'm gonna go with. Ooh, why did you pick me first?
Anybody have a word first?
I have one. I was going to say nervous.
Okay. I feel that. I'm feeling that too. Next.
I don't have a word. I have an expression or a sound.
What is it? Okay. That's fine. Yeah.
I think I'll go with intrigued, because I'm kind of tired of hearing the same story over and over again. So I'm intrigued on how this is going to be different.
I feel that.
I think for me, I'll say unrest, because I feel like there's just so much that needs to be done on all levels, even organizing. So definitely unrest.
I think I'm feeling very creative, seeing how we're going to be able to use this as an opportunity to reimagine the world.
All right, let's take a look at the convention.
Good evening. I'm Eva Longoria Baston, and welcome to the 2020 Democratic National Convention, Uniting America. Every 4 years, we come together to reaffirm our democracy. This year, we've come to save it. It's going to take all of us. So tonight we stand together, united by the values we cherish: decency, respect, justice, and the opportunity to rise up. We always hear that line about this being the most important election of our lifetimes, but this year it really is. The past few months have tested us all. We've lost more than 170,000 family members and friends to COVID. This tragedy is compounded by the loss of jobs and income. But it's not just the past few months. The past 4 years have left us as a nation diminished and divided. And yet, in the middle of the fear and sorrow and the uncertainty, people have come together because they know we are better than this. America is better than this. And so we choose to act, inspired by the 3 sacred words that breathed life into our nation: we the people.
Okay, this is a good theme for that. We the people.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, let's go.
Come on now.
Okay, we ready?
I think I learned this in middle school or 5th grade.
Can I say this in Spanish?
So should I read just this line or the whole thing?
Justice.
Tranquility, tranquilidad,
Liberty. Liberty.
Let's do this.
We the people.
We the people.
We the people.
Nosotros. We the people.
We the people. We the people of the United States.
De los Estados Unidos.
In order to form a more perfect union.
Establish justice.
ensure domestic tranquility,
provide for the common defense,
promote the general welfare
and secure the blessings of liberty
to ourselves and our posterity.
Do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.
We the people.
We the people.
We the people.
We the people.
We the people. We the people. We the people.
We the people of the United States.
We the people call the 48th Quadrennial Democratic National Convention to order.
Okay, they better.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So one of the things that the campaign is focused on is telling us that, hold on one second. The campaign is really focused on telling us that Joe Biden is the unifier in chief for the country, that the country needs at this moment. Is that something that y'all are feeling, that your friends are feeling, that he is this person to bring us together?
In my eyes, he's never been that person for me. And that's why I think this convention is so important and informative for not only the Biden campaign, but the general election as a whole. Like, it's going to set apart the motivation of why we should vote for him. Are we going to vote for him because he's emerging as a strong candidate that's going to prove to represent us? Or are we voting for him to be like the lesser of two evils? Like this, in the next 3 days after this, we'll get a better gauge of that.
I'd have to agree with Eli on that. I don't think that he's ever been that person for me, but I think that him and his team have been very intentional about creating a diverse and inclusive team to be representative of the intersecting communities of America. My only hope is that while, yes, we can have all of these different faces and experiences at the table, but if we don't allow them to truly be vocal and truly be on the forefront of that work, we do a disservice. So I'm definitely interested in seeing how, if elected, how he's going to be able to go from diverse and inclusive representation to actually allowing diverse and inclusive voices to truly lead, the different movements that's going to help change the trajectory of this nation.
Tim, you were one of the first, not one of the first people, but you were early to support Joe Biden. What was the thing that made you say that Joe Biden is the president this country needs?
Yeah, so, I don't think any of us would say that Joe Biden is the choice of many young people. But I chose to endorse him because we're going into the Alabama primary or the Big Tuesday primaries. And I saw that, he was probably going to be the person who emerged. And so I wanted us to, get past the divisiveness of the primary season and the debate season and kind of focus on making sure we get Donald Trump out of the White House. It really came down to that for me.
Mm-hmm. And that's what a lot of people say, that Joe Biden offers this steady leadership, or this idea of steady leadership. Is that simply because we've had 4 years of Donald Trump? Is that the only reason why? Or do we genuinely believe that Joe Biden is going to bring good governance to the country? What do y'all think?
Personally, I think he's, I don't know if he said it or somebody else did, but I think he's a bridge to our next leader. I think the Democratic Party did not do a good job of building a bench behind President Obama. Once he was gone and he served his 2 terms, there was nobody left to take that place as, okay, this is the person that we're going to follow going forward. He's going to be the representative of, us. And so that's how we end up in a position where we have a field of, I think it was 16 candidates, and 2 or 3 were people of color. One was somebody that you would consider young. I mean, it's a very telling that the Democratic Party didn't do that. And hopefully we'll learn from our mistakes going forward in these next 4 years, whether Biden wins or not. We'll get some people in place that can move us to the future.
Absolutely. And I agree with that choice, that chance to begin again. That I think that that's what Joe Biden hopefully will give to us. But as Eli said earlier, he has this convention to prove to us. Let's go back and listen.
Leadership that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will bring to the White House. So during the next 4 nights, we will gather safely from our homes to listen, to learn, to be inspired, to act, to vote, and to build that more perfect union. I am honored to be with you this evening. I'm here tonight as a 9th-generation Texan, as a daughter of a veteran and a teacher, as a mother, as a voter, and as a patriot. I share Joe Biden's belief that the story of America is one of ordinary people coming together to do extraordinary things. And at our best, our country rewards hard work. We celebrate diversity. We look out for each other, and we lift one another up. So tonight, we're going to begin with the simple kindness we've been extending to each other a lot lately. We're going to check in with folks around the country and ask, how are you doing? As many of you know, small businesses employ half of all U.S. workers. Tonight we have Scott. Scott, you are a small business owner from Swarthmore, Pennsylvania. Small businesses have been hit so hard in this crisis, so many small businesses.
So one of the things that Trump ran really big on the first time he ran is that he was this businessman that could put us back on track. Have y'all ever heard someone tell you that Donald Trump made them their pockets bigger, or their small business run more efficiently or effectively, or anything like that? I've never heard.
I don't think so. I don't think you can say that about someone who literally coined the term "you're fired." So I don't think so.
You know, and I was rewatching Joe Biden's 2016 convention speech, and that was exactly what he said. You know, how can we trust someone that has ran everything of his into the ground, you know, to rebuild our economy? I'm nervous. My fear is Joe Biden is still a capitalist, right? Who does not really look out for the little guy all the time. So, Eli, for someone that supported Bernie Sanders in the primary, what is something that you are needing Joe Biden to do to line up more with your vision of this country?
Oh, the list. We could talk about whether it's substantive like criminal justice reform, whether we're talking about, you know, a single payer healthcare system, like whatever that might be. Like there are so many things that come from the progressive side that I'm afraid are going to get drowned out through a centrist president. I mean, obviously, like, yes, lesser of two evils, but I don't want us to be so focused on Joe Biden being the end all be all that we completely just like forget about the progressive wing of the Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Russell, as someone who organizes young people around the country, are they feeling that too? What do you think Joe Biden has to do to get those college students that you work with to support him?
Well, first and foremost, I will say that this entire race has made my job a little bit difficult because, you know, as many of us have echoed, it is sort of that lesser of two evil type of dynamic. And I think that trying to, one, get young people, registered to vote, but also get them to be excited about voting has been incredibly difficult because they don't feel represented. They don't see themselves, or they feel as though like, I'm going to vote, you're going to use me for this election season, and then these next 4 years, you won't be calling my phone anymore. And trying to get them to, it's very hard to try to get them to feel any less of that, because I too feel that way in a lot of ways. But what I can do is that I have to remind them, and this is something that my boss has always instilled in us, and I continue to live by, is to not invest so much in candidates, but the movement that we create to push candidates in order to build the type of world in America that we want to see. So we know that Joe Biden isn't perfect. We know that a lot of folks in his administration won't be perfect. But what we do know is that they can that they're more likely to be pushed in a certain direction and more receptive to being held accountable than this current administration. The single issue that I will say, though, that I think that Joe Biden will have to use to rally young folks is student debt. as a person who holds student debt from my graduate degree, I recognize how that debt has gotten in the way of my ability to move upward, has affected my ability to purchase a home, and a lot of different things that have, been instilled in us as living this quote unquote American dream, or having this type of lifestyle of comfortability. And I think that, if Joe Biden wants young people to feel inspired by him, to want to rally around him, that's one of the issues that he's going to have to be very, very vocal on, and take a lot of very progressive action around, because the time for student debt has surpassed. There's no reason why we should still be in this same student debt threshold that continues to increase daily, especially in an era in which people are losing their jobs left and right, in which students are being charged online electronic fees for to go to college, and online, in which they didn't even elect to do. We have to be more vocal about this, and we have to be vocal about it in a way that is just not, that hasn't been seen before. We have to think outside the box, think creatively, and think of a college affordability mechanism that is going to work for all people, not just those who may look like us or have similar experiences of us. We have to look at college folks, first gens, people who are DACA recipients. All of these folks, all of these factors have to be taken into account.
Absolutely. So, Mariah, if you could tell the Joe Biden's comms team anything, what would you tell them? What would be your advice?
I think my advice, and something that I tell all, legislators, candidates, is to always keep it authentic. The people, and I don't know if you guys would agree, but like actually getting to see who your candidate is, like someone who's not putting on airs, seeing like the behind the scenes, seeing them in ways that really humanizes them, I think is extremely important. Because, like a lot of y'all said, Joe Biden is kind of hard for us to relate to. We ain't rich white men. But if he shows us more of who he truly is, I think that will resonate well across audiences. Because I feel like a lot of people are like, well, he's just doing this for the camera, or this is just another photo op. So really hammering down on the authenticity is going to be super important to reaching a lot of the people who are very cynical about him. But his marketing has been looking really bomb. I can't lie. Their team is really, really killing it. But definitely keeping the authenticity is important.
Do y'all feel, because I was trying to think about it this morning, do y'all feel that more people are engaged this election than they were in 2016? I had a friend when I was in college who told me one day, on election day, we were walking home, and he says, yeah, I didn't vote. I didn't care. They're both going to be pretty bad. And I was like, that's not true. Now I see him, and he is every bit of politically engaged and involved. And the one thing he says is, when I wasn't, that's what happened. Do y'all kind of see the same things happening in your communities? And what do you think is that thing that will keep them politically active and engaged? Because we don't want people to think that just because we have Democrats in elected office that we're good, right? That things are fine. Mm-hmm. So what is that thing that you think we're going to have to do to keep people involved in movement work and community organizing past Joe Biden getting elected?
I think for this election, for a lot of people, they feel like there's a lot more at stake. Like as Russell mentioned, the climate crisis is intensifying, and global emissions are steadily rising. We're pulling out of the Paris Agreement. Every other day, it seems like Donald Trump's going to be in like a World War III with other countries. A lot of people have been hit really hard with this COVID pandemic, not only through the healthcare aspect, but also economically. And going back to healthcare, a lot of people don't have access to healthcare. Like there's just so many things that are really at stake for a lot of people. I think that's really is what is motivating a lot of people to become more civically engaged, to share information, to share those resources. I definitely will say social media has shown me that a lot more people are starting to pay attention. like people that I previously never really saw post a lot about politics are really starting to engage. So I think a lot of people feel that sense of urgency to act now because there's so much at stake.
Tim, do you think that people in your community, and your city are more engaged? What are you seeing as an elected official?
I'm seeing a little bit of both. There are people who, see the things that Donald Trump is doing, and they're like, we got to get him out. And then there are other people who say, well, he lost the popular vote last time. My vote doesn't count. So, I'm not worried about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think if the vice president, Senator Harris, decide to make student debt a key focal point of this campaign, I think that will be helpful to drive a lot of the younger crowd out. As Mariah said, I think if the vice president becomes more relatable to people, I think that will do a whole lot to help drive some of the apathetic voters to the polls. I think we should really all focus on absentee voting or vote by mail, whichever is available in your area. I think that could be the game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. Because as we speak, Donald Trump, Postmaster General LaJoy, and the GOP are literally trying to steal an election in front of us. Jaria, do you think it's because they realize the people power that's been built over the last few years, but specifically the last few months? Or do you think that it's just some, they just do it because they hate America,
Yeah, I think honestly it's been pushed by COVID-19. Like we've come to the realization that everything is not slowly, but it's turning to convenience. So you don't have to go wait in the line. You don't have to go work in the office. You don't have to do the day-to-day things that we used to, because you can do everything from the comfort of your home. So if you're able to just drop a ballot in a mailbox instead of going and waiting in line, then that's what people are going to do. So I wouldn't say it's so much because they hate America, but it's moving towards this, everything's at my fingertips. Like that's how our world operates. So if I can make it simpler on myself as an individual, then that's what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm. So tonight, former Governor John Kasich, Republican Governor John Kasich, is expected to speak. We haven't heard, or former Housing Secretary Julian Castro is nowhere to be found. Former gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams is nowhere to be found. Eli, do you think that says something about Joe Biden that he would ask John Kasich and Mike Bloomberg to speak at his convention?
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is a tactic to pander to centrists, to let them know that they're coming to reclaim the Democratic Party for what it once was. So yeah, we're talking about like John Kasich coming to speak. I've seen him speak live a couple times before. He's going to say really nice words. It's going to be, a lot of kumbaya, I'm sure. But that's so alienating towards the progressive wing of the party. Like right now, we're trying to get like police reform, like as like a main focal point of the Democratic Party, whether it be defund the police, reallocate funding, things like that. And then you're having someone that's like a radical anti-choicer like John Kasich that's going to come and speak. It doesn't look well, but we'll see how that pans out.
Russell, we have talked about this a lot. What is it about the Democratic Party's need to frame the forgotten voter as this middle of America white man, not the millions of Black, brown, indigenous people across this country who are disenfranchised and forgotten about? What does that say about this party if their future is with people of color, but they're holding on to the past of that middle America white man?
I think that it ties into what I think a few of us are, if not all of us, have echoed, is that this party's there's a large disassociation that this party has with the current landscape of this country and the issues that so many people face around the country, rather, Black, white, indigenous, poor, queer, whatever the case may be. The Democratic Party does have a very disconnected position from on the ground work and the different issues that communities face. And I think, much like Eli said, trying to pander to this centrist mentality, is like, let's reestablish the party for what it used to be. We continue to walk backwards and continue to walk backwards when we know we should be moving forward. And also when we recognize that we are living in very, very interesting times. We're living in a time in which we are experiencing one of the most outrageous global pandemics that any of us have ever seen in our lifetimes. We're experiencing a very, very difficult and scary, quite frankly, climate crisis that, if we are not very careful, can take us out very soon. We are living in very interesting times, and a time that we cannot afford to play it safe. We cannot afford to play it safe. And when you have someone in office who is literally marionetting this country in front of our very eyes and literally playing childlike games with our postal service, our healthcare system, our justice system, all of these things, we have no, regardless of party, as people who consider themselves patriots, people who consider themselves citizens of this, all of that, we have no room to play it safe simply because we don't live in safe times. We live in a time in which we have to attack issues aggressively because these issues are attacking the people aggressively. The Democratic Party cannot afford to do that. If they continue to pander to this whole, much like the GOP does, this good old time days that never existed for anyone who wasn't white, rich, and cis hetero, we're going to continue to essentially fall back into the same results. And again, it may be, a little bit pretty with white paint on it, but essentially the wall is still molded. It's still molded. You can't cover up a molded wall with paint and expect for you to live in a healthy household. And I think if we continue on this same path that we're on, that's what's going to continue to happen.
Yeah, that was actually a really good analogy. So this concept of building a better future, this idea that we all play a part in remaking America. A lot of remaking America will take having tough conversations. I've been having tough conversations the last week since Joe Biden chose Kamala Harris. Jaria, what did you feel, when he first made that announcement? And second of all, what was the political response you had? And then what was that personal response to him choosing Kamala Harris to be his running mate?
Yeah, I kind of found out not through social media. My friends were going crazy and really excited that he had chosen Senator Harris. I think the political response was a good move. We saw this coming. That he did a Black woman. If you looked at the list of his top 10 people, he had a good chunk of really powerful and influential Black women. I saw this tweet on Twitter, and it was like, you can disagree with Kamala Harris's standpoints, but still acknowledge that history is being made. And I think that's how I felt personally, because having a Black woman on the ticket is instrumental, regardless of who it is. That is a huge deal for our country. When it comes to policies and all of that, I think that could be picked apart a little bit more. But I think that tweet really described how I felt personally.
Mariah, what about you?
I definitely think that it's a historic moment to see a Black woman on the ticket, on a major ticket. So we haven't seen that in a while now. Of course, it's inspirational, motivational to all Black women, because we often feel like we're the most powerless in America. So it's nice to see someone, being recognized for their accolades. Of course, all the AKAs were going crazy because Kamala's on the ticket. So I feel like we will never hear the end of that. That's probably going to be the Boule theme in the next 2 years. Because Kamala 2020 is and it's going to be like 2022. But a lot of people, it's exciting to see a Black woman on the ticket. Like Jaria said, you don't have to necessarily agree with her policies to be able to say, yes, this is iconic, and I'm here for it to some degree. So I think it's extremely exciting.
So what do you say to, and this is directed to everybody, but what do you say to the folks who say Joe Biden chose the top cop of California at the time that we are asking for drastic, radical police reform in this country? What does that conversation look like? You know, because as someone who does self-describe as an abolitionist, I have had to have, you know, conversations with folks that aren't centered on, you know, closing prisons tomorrow, but this long-term idea of reallocating money to social services that would eradicate prisons naturally. That's what the framework is. People don't want to hear that from you. So what are y'all talking to your families about? What are you talking to your friends about who are, you know, young folk or who just don't trust Joe Biden and Kamala Harris? What is it that you're talking to them about? How do you make the case? Other than he's just not Donald Trump, because we can all say that, you know, but what is your selling pitch if you've had any?
Well, Stephon, you and I have had this conversation multiple of times. I'm sure we'll continue to about this this conversation of grace and transgression. And while yes, you know, I have a lot of criticism towards Senator Harris in terms of, you know, how deep she was in her her criminal justice work in California. A lot of it I disagree with, but I will say that I have seen a lot of evolvement from her on a lot of different ways, and I do think that why yes, she has done a lot that I haven't agreed with and has completely disenfranchised a lot of communities. I want to say that Senator Harris recognizes that and would likely be in a place to try to right those wrongs and build a better system to be able to combat some of those things that she did. Now, what I will say is that, do I think that Joe Biden or Kamala Harris would be full-fledged abolitionists? Absolutely not. Do I think that they are in a place to be pushed in a way that gets us to making some strides in our criminal justice system? Yes, I do. But I need for both of them to recognize the roles that they have both played in the disenfranchisement of different communities in the criminal justice system and be able to say and admit, yes, I did A, B, and C. I want to be able to correct those as the helm of leadership for this country if given the chance. And I want to be able to bring the community in to help me do that so that we can do this together. That is my expectation of both of them. And that's something that I want for everyone to have as we continue to move forward and see what is our, you know, support for them look like. How are we going to hold them accountable? How are we going to provide criticism that's not just provocative, but actually adds to the conversation and adds to the work?
Mm-hmm. Tim, what about you?
Okay, yeah. You know, I think we need to have a real look at what she did in California, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So without having that conversation, or without being objective about this is where you messed up at, as Russell said, she has to be able to tell us, listen, I made a mistake here. You know, I caused a lot of harm in communities, and this is how I can fix it. I think she's probably the best situated to be able to reform a system because she knows exactly how it works. She was there, you know, in the trenches, causing the damage, I guess, so to speak. And she's the best person, I think, to be able to,
you know,
to reform.
She did a few months ago a talk with Angelica Ross, a Black trans woman who is an activist, an actress, and you know, she holds, fire to the flame. She pulls no punches. And one of the things that she said when Joe Biden announced Kamala Harris is that when she talked to Kamala Harris, she felt that she heard what she was saying, that she understood the harm even before Angelica went and talked to her, that she had an understanding of the harm that she had caused, and she's trying to move forward. When last semester in my graduate program, I was talking a lot, my critique about, the election was that we don't give Black people, but Black women specifically, the ability to be nuanced and to have a complicated track record and past. So Jaria, do you think that she's just gonna get it horribly simply because she's a Black woman? It doesn't matter what her policy stance is, or do you think that people are actually going to sit there and look through her record? Because if you do, you can see the good and the bad, that there's some good stuff in there too. With white guys, we'll see all the good stuff, a little bit of the bad stuff, and jump over it, right? So what's your take on that?
So I think, for one, I wanted to give a shout out for my shirt. It says "Honor, Love, and Protect Black Women," and I thought it was very fitting for tonight. But I think for her, she is going to get a lot of heat for being a Black woman, just flat out. And you can look at, somebody else who might be a white male who has done the same exact things, probably 10 times worse, and it's just going to get swept under the rug. So I do think that she is going to get a lot of scrutiny for that. But I will say, on the note of her being able to recognize the harm that she's done, I believe it was last year, she did a talk at GW about her book. And I went to it, and it was the first time I got to hear her as a person and not a politician. And she really walked through her childhood and how she became to be the person that she is today. She talked about her time at Howard. And I think if she highlights that side of her, she can kind of get the Black people who are kind of on the fence about her, because she has those relatable experiences. But I think that is kind of overshadowed by her track record in California, which I do think people are going to sit down and say, okay, this is a community that you essentially screwed over. And that's going to get more attention than, one good thing that she might have done.
Eli, how do we, in this age, because my fear is that when folks rightfully criticize, folks always take it and run completely misogynistic, right? There's never just attacking a policy. There's always a attacking of the person. So how do you have conversations, if you've had these conversations with folks, how do you, challenge the people who don't like her simply, because of her policy, or there's some people who say they don't like her because of her policy, but they don't like her simply just because of who she is?
Right. How do you differentiate the two? That's tough, because I feel like a lot of people genuinely believe that their issues with her are policy-based, but aren't going to do the work to realize what might lie under some of that anger for her. That doesn't negate the terrible things that she's done in the past in California, but it is worth the conversation of understanding truly what do we dislike about her policy and how are we going to stick to that, and also understanding what she had to do to be the first vice president of or nominee for a major party like this. We were talking about how this is a historical moment, something that we've never seen before. But at the same time, it's really tough, because I was saying before, I'm not in her fan club in that way because of her policies, but it is so nice to see a Black woman where she is at in her place. But it's just holding specifically white people accountable in their criticisms for Kamala and making sure that it's substantive and not deeply rooted in something else. And I think that, especially Black men, that'll be that's where it's our time to step up and have these tough conversations with white counterparts.
Absolutely. But as you just mentioned, it's also having conversation with Black menfolk, right? That are having to attack, their own misogynoir and the idea of seeing a Black woman in leadership. Russell and I co-host a podcast that's focused on talking to Black men. And in the coming weeks, I'm sure we will wind up talking about it. But I think I'm nervous because I'm scared we may not have her back. Does that make sense? I am just really scared that she could be let out to dry. For example, Cori Bush, she just went out in Missouri. She was endorsed by Justice Democrats, the Sunrise Movement. She was a progressive who beat, what's his name? Clay. I don't remember his name. But anyways, a huge political dynasty out there in St. Louis. And, she beat him. She was not endorsed by anyone Bernie Sanders. But she was the one that was on the ground, building the power, building the relationships. Barack Obama brought out his slate of candidates, completely ignored her. Not to say that that'll happen at the top of this ticket. I'm nervous just in the general electorate that we may miss an opportunity to really have a radical conversation about the way that we move forward. So we're going to take a break because when we come back, Michelle Obama is expected to speak at the convention. In 2016, I think she gave one of the most heartfelt deliveries on why Hillary Clinton needed to be the nominee. And I'm very excited to see what she does next. So let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break. We'll go ahead and stream the convention and we'll be back here in 10 minutes. How's that for everybody? Good. Okay, just make sure that you mute your mics and I'll see you back in 10 minutes.
City of Charleston removed its statue honoring John C. Calhoun, an honored advocate of slavery. And construction is underway on the International African American Museum at Gadsden's Wharf. Much like the country as a whole, we are stepping out from the shadows of our past and beginning to lay the groundwork for a more just future. It won't be easy. We can only succeed if we move forward together. So we will need a president who sees unifying people as a requirement of the job. A president who understands the true meaning of community and how to build it through trust and humility. And with so many families experiencing loss in this pandemic, lost jobs, lost loved ones, and lost confidence in the president to keep us safe, we need a president who understands both profound loss and what it takes to bounce back. But more important than his firsthand experience with loss and hardship is his ability to translate that perspective into policy and solutions and prioritize hard-working people and persistent poverty counties over partisan politics or personal gain. That's why I stand with Joe and why he will always be an adopted son of South Carolina. Joe Biden is as good a man as he is a leader. I have said before and wish to reiterate tonight, we know Joe, but more importantly, Joe knows us.
I am Kevin. I do a lot of things in life, but the thing I'm most proud of is I am a TAPS military mentor, and that's how I spend the majority of my time post-Marine Corps.
Building memories like the ones we build together is the single best thing I do with my time. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your lives and sharing the journeys for the past decade.
We've got about 500 kids and family members and mentors, and we're all packed into this very large ballroom. And all of a sudden, the back door opens up, and in walks Joe Biden. I had almost an out-of-body experience because he surprised us all. You know, I like to think I'm decent at reading people. From my time in the Marine Corps, my time as an intel officer, my time as a drill instructor, my time studying psychology. He was being real. I mean, you can't fake that kind of a smile. He was genuinely happy to see these kids and spend time with them. It's easy to lose faith in humanity, especially today. There's a lot of polarization, leaves a lot of room for a lot of hope. And it's hard to articulate real character when you see it. You know, policies are great, and we need sound policies as well, which he also has those because he's got the chops, right? But it's almost like none of that matters if you don't have the character. This is a very unprecedented and challenging time that requires an unprecedented and courageous leader. We need someone with the courage to do what's necessary and what's right to strive towards that more perfect union. That's Joe Biden. I know Joe because he cares about everybody else before himself.
You know what else Joe knows? Joe knows about pandemics. In 2014, he helped stop the spread of Ebola and brought the world together to keep it contained. And after that success, knowing this would happen again, Vice President Biden and President Obama assembled a pandemic playbook to make sure that America was prepared and protected. The Trump administration disbanded the pandemic response team that was given to them. Americans have died and lost their livelihoods because of it. We, the people, deserve a president who believes in science, that recognizes the threat of COVID, who has a plan to get us through it. And that is Joe Biden. We're grateful that across the country, there are responsible leaders who are stepping up. One of them provided clear direction and memorable PowerPoints, New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Hello. Today's Monday, day 170. New Yorkers were ground zero for the COVID virus and have gone from one of the highest infection rates on the globe to one of the lowest. We climbed the impossible mountain, and right now we are on the other side. We did it with the kindness and assistance of so many. New Yorkers want to thank everyone who came to our aid, 30,000 Americans who volunteered to come here to help in our hour of need. Your love gave us the strength to carry on. We went through hell, but we have learned much. We know that our problems go beyond the COVID virus. COVID is the symptom, not the illness. Our nation is in crisis, and in many ways, COVID is just a metaphor. A virus attacks when the body is weak and when it cannot defend itself. Over these past few years, America's body politic has been weakened. The divisions have been growing deeper, the anti-Semitism, the anti-Latino, the anti-immigrant fervor, the racism in Charlottesville, where the KKK didn't even bother to wear their hoods, and in Minnesota, where the life was squeezed from Mr. Floyd. Only a strong body can fight off the virus, and America's divisions weakened it. Donald Trump didn't create the initial division. The division created Trump. He only made it worse. Our collective strength is exercised through government. It is, in effect, our immune system. And our current federal government is dysfunctional and incompetent. It couldn't fight off the virus. In fact, it didn't even see it coming. The European virus infected the Northeast while the White House was still fixated on China. The virus had been attacking us for months before they even knew it was here. We saw the failure of a government that tried to deny the virus, then tried to ignore it, and then tried to politicize it. The failed federal government that watched New York get ambushed by their negligence and then watched New York suffer, but all through it learned absolutely nothing. So today, 6 months after it began, the nation is still unprepared. And we now face a second threat, but this time not from Mother Nature. This is a man-made threat by our own negligence. We now see the virus ricocheting across the country, from one state to another. Today, we trail the world in defeating COVID. We have over 5 million cases. Americans learned a critical lesson, how vulnerable we are when we are divided, and how many lives can be lost when our government is incompetent. But we learned something else, my friends. We saw the negative, but we also saw the positive. As they proved their way failed, we proved that our way succeeded. That America can still rise to the occasion. We can put our differences aside and find commonality. Government can tell the truth and can build trust. We can judge by content of character rather than color of skin. We can care for one another. That Americans can work together.
We're going to come back in
forge
2 minutes.
community and a competent government. that of course we will wear masks because we are smart and because I care about you and because you care about me. Of course we will socially distance because staying away shows how close we actually are. Yes, we will set up testing and tracing and do whatever we need to do to mobilize to win this battle because we are America. We win wars, and we are the greatest country on the globe. And for all the pain and all the tears, our way worked, and it was beautiful. We showed that our better angels are strong and that Americans will rise to their call. We saw that even at the end of the day, even if it is a long day, that love wins. Americans' eyes have been opened, and we have seen in this crisis the truth that government matters and leadership matters. And it determines whether we thrive and grow or whether we live or die. Now we need a leader as good as our people, a leader who appeals to the best within us, not the worst, a leader who can unify, not divide, a leader who can bring us up, not tear us down. I know that man. I've worked with that man. I've seen his talent. I've seen his strength. I've seen his pain, and I've seen his heart. That man is Joe Biden. Joe Biden is what I call America tough, tough in the best way, tough that is smart, united, disciplined, and loving. Joe Biden can restore the soul of America. And that's exactly what our country needs today. Thank you.
And now we'll hear from Kristen Urquiza.
Hi.
So that was Governor Andrew Cuomo from the state of New York. So Governor Cuomo has had some very interesting, I don't even know how to say it. He's done things well and then pooped everything else. So one of the things that Governor Cuomo paraded around, and this will get us into, this is a segue into my question. When he was parading that New York State was producing more hand sanitizer than anywhere else in the country, he heralded that. The country heralded that as something that was so amazing, American ingenuity, doing what they needed to do. The folks that had to create that hand sanitizer or package that hand sanitizer were New York State incarcerated folks who couldn't even use, right, the hand sanitizer that they were making. And everyone kind of just brushed that under the rug, and we didn't touch on it. And one of the things, though, that he has been heralded for doing was being the national rebuff to Trump. But it kind of just seemed like a pissing match between Cuomo and President Trump. Do y'all think that's what this general election is about to be? A pissing match between Joe Biden and Donald Trump? I was talking to someone and we were talking about the debates and how that is a one quick stop to get drunk. You know what I'm saying? Take a shot every time one of them decides to play who's bigger, right? Do you think that that's what this is going to be? Or do you think this is going to be a clear distinction between the right track for America and the absolutely wrong track? And not just for us as politicos, but for everyday people on the ground. Whoever would like to go first can answer that.
I see it being very pissing match-esque moving forward, if that's the word that we want to use here. But I can see a lot of people focusing a lot on different clips that are said by candidates, and you know, back in 2016 with the hot sauce in my bag with Hillary Clinton, and like these little things to like pander and like on social media that people just eat up in the moment. But it's important to keep in mind that this is an American Idol, and like we're not just voting for someone that's the most entertaining. Like this, lives are on the line. But I don't think that point will be something that is like valued and cherished. It's just going to be, you know, who's on, like comms teams have like so much power in elections, especially in this one, I feel like. So what's said on Twitter from Joe Biden versus what's said on Twitter from Donald Trump. That's why I think it'll be a lot like a pissing match.
Tim, I see you nodding your head. You agreeing?
Yeah, Donald Trump has showed us who he is, and I think that he will be able to, for lack of a better term, sucker Joe into, that kind of mine is bigger type arguments, and I can definitely see that happening. I hope it doesn't, but I can definitely see that being something that happens often. I'm really intrigued to see, though, Vice President or Senator Harris in her debates
and Mike Pence, because it's gonna be. She's the only person on any ticket that can speak in a coherent sentence that makes sense, right? And seeing these mediocre white men, including Joe Biden, next to this brilliant HBCU grad that is a mastermind with prosecutorial language to take someone out. One of the things, though, that we're having to think about is with COVID-19 having to move everything to digital. So what do y'all feel so far about this digital convention? Do you think it works? Do you think it takes something away from where we're at? Mariah, from a comm standpoint, or just from a viewer standpoint, do you think this takes the effect away from the magic that people normally feel because of conventions?
I think that having the digital conventions definitely increases access for people, because you can watch on YouTube. Some people like me, child, don't have cable, so you got to stream everything. So I definitely think it increases the access for people to actually tune in and pay attention. So that has been one thing that I have actually begun to enjoy. I mean, if you can enjoy anything about being quarantined, is that a lot of conventions are being put online and they are being made free for people to access. So I think that's extremely important. I don't know if it necessarily loses its magic, because I don't think I would have been there in person anyway. But I guess for some people who love the hustle and bustle of the DNC coming to their town, I definitely think it has hurt some communities economically, because usually these conventions
Milwaukee was really looking
big
forward
for
to
tourism and nature. Yeah, and that's even worse because we are in a pandemic. So that's like two things that two dampering factors. I couldn't think of a better word, but so there's pros and cons to having everything digitally, but I definitely think that it is increasing access and it is building more engagement and generating more conversation around the
Jari, do you
convention.
think
So
that
that's
this
the
is
biggest
another distinction between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party? Because Donald Trump, they're still going to do some in-person convention. They're just going to bring everything smaller scale. They're going to do contact tracing. But when this man did a rally in Oklahoma, Herman Cain died. Now, you would know Herman Cain was dead because he's still tweeting. But Jaria, what is... so Jaria, I mean, what are... Why is that man... Like, his fan... Okay, anyways. Do you think that this shows a clear contrast between them again? Or do you think the Republicans will be reignited because they're in person together?
Yeah, no, I definitely think it draws a line, and I think it also makes a policy standpoint. Like, we actually care about healthcare. We actually think COVID is real. Like, we, know that people die and get sick, and I think that speaks more volumes than getting people together at a small rally, whether it's downsized or not, because you see the effects that are happening. Whether you are opening up a bar or a school, people are still getting sick. So I think going to this virtual format, it shows that the Democratic Party has some common sense and that they're actually practicing what they're preaching about, social distancing and making sure that you wear a mask and all that stuff. So I think it does draw a policy line between the Democrats and the Republicans.
I agree. So in 2016, Hillary Clinton, last night at her convention, You know, she could barely get through her speech because of the hecklers that were in the crowd, you know, the Bernie bros who refused to let her get through that speech. But she did. But at the end of that convention, you know, all the balloons fell, all of that. It was really cute. Barack Obama had fireworks at his convention. You know, he did his outdoors. And that really brought people together. Russell, what do you think we now need to individually do to get our folks excited and ready to go, to not necessarily about being a Democrat, right? But just taking ownership of their political power that they already have to make some change?
I think that something that, so in the, like, I think this is the best example for it. Oftentimes, like when I hear people trying to register folks to vote or get them to vote, it'd be like, especially Black folks, oh, vote because someone marched for your right to, which is very, very true. But to say that is to discredit the fact that we have so much more to vote for. Vote because the world is literally on fire. Vote because we need competent leadership. Vote because we need a healthcare system that ensures that every person who lives in this country has a right to be healthy. Vote because we have an education system that is incredibly flawed and does not represent or support anyone who is not white and rich. We have so many things to vote for. So I think when we have these conversations to get our people fired up, to get them ready, we really do have to talk about so many of the things that we have to vote for, that inspire us. We don't vote because we care about Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or anybody on this ticket. We vote because we have a life to live. We have children and nieces and nephews and siblings and grandma and folks in our lives that we have to vote for. That is our power. And yes, someone did march for our right to vote. People died for our right to vote, and I would never discredit that. But in addition to, I have so much of the future in order to vote for that I have to take into account, and that is what has to fire me up. Because if I don't look for that, I'm going to constantly be looking back at the past in these haunting reminders of what could have been and what never happened.
Mm-hmm.
But what I can look at is what can happen and what I have essentially some stake or some power in making happen by being creative and by reimagining a world that I truly want to see for myself and for the generations that come after me.
And I agree on that point so much. Yes, folks have died for us, but also some folks lived for us too. And I think of us being the people that lived, right? To be able to tell this story and to be able, you know, to pick up the cross and pick up the burden. The problem, though, is I don't want to bully people to the polls. You know, I personally, because of the people I'm connected to that have been disenfranchised and can't go to the polls, I'm going for them because they simply cannot. So how do we deal with folks who are just, I don't want to go. I'm not going to the polls. I'm not doing it at all. I don't have my way. I refuse to take part of this. What do we do? How do we engage with them? Because they are a part of the conversation and we do have to find a way to engage them. Anyone, this will be the last question before we jump into Watch Michelle Obama. And Mariah's going to have to step out.
Yes, I want to say that thank y'all for having me on the panel. Actually, I have to dip out. I got an early morning for work tomorrow. So thank you so much for having me on. It was so great to talk to y'all, and I'm excited for the rest of this event.
Yes, talk to you later.
Nice to meet
Bye,
you.
y'all.
So I don't remember what my question was. What was it?
So I've always just really disliked the sentiment that vote just because, like we talked about, like people died for this, da 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 da. And so a talking point that conservative Black people will make, that as much as I disagree with what they're fighting for, it does hold some sort of value to it. They say that the Democrats already believe that Black people are just going to hand their vote over to them, and they don't need to work for it. And just to hand that vote over without any sort of accountability makes no room. Like, all we do is perpetuate any sort of shortcomings that might come out of the Democratic Party, any sort of like malfeasance that comes out of the Democratic Party. So yes, vote. And as for me and mine, I will be voting. But when I hear people say that they don't want to vote, and they can come up with a coherent reason to why they don't want to support the Democratic Party, well, I can't necessarily adopt that for the way that I'm going to be civically engaged. I can't discount that anger, because what we do is like this endless circle of like, well, we'll worry about these issues later. Right now, just vote for Democrats, and then just hope that things get resolved. But it's 2020. Our blood is still in the streets. It's 2020. We are in the middle of a pandemic where Black and brown folks are being the most affected by it. So yes, vote. But voting is not the end all be all for Black liberation. And I think that's where we get things kind of twisted, is like, you go to the polls, suddenly we have, we've made our way out of all this like generational trauma. No, like that cannot be it. And there's so many Black elected officials that will tout that narrative. And it's so dangerous to the rest of us. They get very comfortable in the positions that they're in. They forget who's collateral damage in these conversations. And it's us on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the activists, it's the workers, it's us.
Yeah. So, Tim, how are you as an elected official, combating that sentiment right there? That there is an inherent generational mistrust in government. How do we attack that?
Yeah, so for me, it's about transparency. I share as much information as I can, and I tend to overshare. I try to be very accessible to people. So if they have any questions or they don't understand something, they have my information. They can reach out to me. I'm very responsive. I always get back to people so that they can talk to me. I work for them, and I feel like it's my responsibility to make sure that if they don't understand something that's going on in their city government, I make sure that they understand it. That doesn't mean they're going to always like it, but at least they understand. And I think to Eli's point, we a lot of times feel like we're supposed to 100%, I'm getting tongue tied, 100% agree with our elected officials. And that's not the case. We're not going to agree with everybody on everything. But we should have, there should be enough agreements that, you feel comfortable supporting the person that's in that office or running for that office. And so I think that's kind of one of the ways that we can bridge that gap of mistrust is probably transparency.
Jaria, what is, as someone who works in politics, how do you help people trust that there are people doing good on their behalf? When they're seeing elected officials attacking the damn postal service, not believing in science. They're seeing, out in the South with Marjorie, whatever that woman's name is, in one of these southern states that is, boldly racist. And the Republican Party, some of them absorb them and want her there. How do we help people? What does government need to do to build that trust, basically?
I think one way that people who do not work in politics can see that is the people that are on this panel. When you look at even yourself being a past Hill staffer and the platform that you've now created, you've seen the inner workings of how the system works, and you're able to articulate, okay, this is how it really goes down. There are people in there, like Mayor Ragland, who are fighting for you. And so that doesn't get, the people who are doing the hardcore fighting don't get the press, and they don't get the media and the tweets. Like, that stuff is usually overshadowed. But if you have people who are in the system working, who see it for themselves and are able to tell their families, sit down with their aunties and uncles and grandparents and say, no, I have someone, that's in my office that's advocating for this provision in this bill. I think that people are just they're easily turned off by all of the compilation of everything that we've been going through. And so it's hard to see the little glimmer of good in the midst of all of the chaos.
Russell, one of the things that young people say, I know I heard it when I was down in North Texas. Politics are not for me. It's not for me. I'm not political. First of all, that's dumb, right? Like if people say that, but you can't tell people that they're just dumb. So how do you interact with young people of all backgrounds who say, politics isn't for me. I'm not going to watch the Democratic convention because that has nothing to do with me. You know, I don't care. What do we say to them? Because the people who are going to show up, as Eli was saying, the people who are going to show up, the people who are going to choose the future, they pretty much decided they're going to do that. What do we do for those people that are so hell-bound in believing that nothing good can come out of this and that politics isn't for them?
Whew, I have so many thoughts. Wow, but I'll keep it brief. Well, first and foremost, we all know that the personal is political. Whether we like it or not, our lives, our livelihood revolves around politics. That's just the reality of it all. But what I will say is that as frustrating and as tiring as it can be in this work, we have to meet people where they are simply for them to get it. And what I recognize is that I've been privileged enough to be in spaces and places and you know, learn different things about politics that be able to digest it in a way. So I have to make that palatable to people who have not had those same privileges as me, but also make it relatable to them. So I ask very simple questions. So for instance, in this instance, I will say, you know, would you want your bills to come on time to your house? And they'll say yes.
Maybe not the bills. Maybe
not the bills, but you know what I mean. You want your mail to come on time? And you'll be like, yeah. Well, do you not know that the government is literally trying to attack the U.S. Postal Service? Mm-hmm. No, I didn't know that. Well, no, that's one of the reasons why you should be voting, that you should be engaged in this conversation so that your mail could, in fact, come to your house and that you can have a stake in that. So I think when we break it down and we have those conversations that relate to the everyday lives of people, I think we get a little bit more, you know, investment in it, especially when we talk about local politics, because I'm sure Mayor Ragland can say local politics, like people just, they don't care. They don't care. So I think when we talk about actually, here are the things that go on in your neighborhood that you probably care about or you complain about. Here's how local politics plays a large role in that. So I think voting in general, when we talk about why people should be voting in all of these elections, it sets a precedent for us to be voting universally, rather that be local, state, nationally, and just meeting people where they are and connecting to the different issues. That's the tactic that I use when I talk to young folks and just folks in general in the community about, you know, why they should be not only engaged in the conversation, but ready to take action.
I agree. They're doing this Republicans for Trump. Let's listen in.
Continuing to follow that path will have terrible consequences for America's soul, because we're being taken down the wrong road by a president who is pitted one against the other. He's unlike all of our best leaders before him, who worked to unite us, to bridge our differences,
I don't think George
and
Bush
lead us to a
united
united America. I'm a lifelong Republican, but that attachment holds second place to my responsibility to my country. That's why I've chosen to appear at this convention. In normal times, something like this would probably never happen, but these are not normal times. I'm proud of my Republican heritage. It's the party of Lincoln, who reflected its founding principles of unity and a higher purpose. But what I have witnessed these past 4 years belies those principles. Many of us can't imagine 4 more years going down this path. And that's why I'm asking you to join with me in choosing a better way forward. I believe the best of America lies ahead, but only when we rediscovered our shared belief in the United States of America, for our children's future, which can be bright, hopeful, and inspired if we choose to make it so. I've known Joe Biden for 30 years. I know his story of profound grief that has so deeply affected his character. I know Joe is a good man, a man of faith, a unifier, someone who understands the hopes and dreams of the common man and the common woman, a man who can help us to see the humanity in each other. He knows that the path to a restored and rejuvenated America lies in respect and unity and a common purpose for everyone. Yes, there are areas where Joe and I absolutely disagree, but that's okay, because that's America. Because whatever our differences, we respect one another as human beings, each of us searching for justice and for purpose. We can all see what's going on in our country today and all the questions that are facing us. And no one person or party has all the answers. But what we do know is that we can do better than what we've been seeing today, for sure. And I know that Joe Biden, with his experience and his wisdom and his decency, can bring us together to help us find that better way. I'm sure there are Republicans and independents who couldn't imagine crossing over to support a Democrat. They fear Joe may turn sharp left and leave them behind. I don't believe that, because I know the measure of the man. It's reasonable, faithful, respectful. And you know, no one pushes Joe around. Joe Biden is a man for our times, times that call for all of us to take off our partisan hats and put our nation first for ourselves and, of course, for our children. When America chooses the right path and pulls together, like we've done so many times before, we can dream big dreams, and we can see the top of the mountain as a United States of America with a soul that is a beacon of freedom to the entire world.
So, general thoughts. Anybody have any?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We all gonna have to say something because
what something, right?
It was very. I what Eli said earlier literally played out for us in a play-by-play of what we
were gonna do
would be a pander to centrists. Yep. When first and foremost, Republican heritage.
That was the thing that I was like, what is that?
I didn't know that was a thing. So very eye-opening. Okay. This is where it completely derailed when he said, people think that Joe will go completely left. I don't believe
pushed around.
I wrote that down.
That tackled two parts of the conversation that we've had this evening. The fact of this will be a pissing match, that was a part of that. And the other fact of completely discrediting anything that people who are considered progressive or left have to contribute to this conversation or to the party in this possible administration. I think that Kasich's speech kind of set them back a lot in a lot of folks' eyes by those few lines alone. It was very disheartening to hear. It was very disheartening. Surprised? No.
No.
Disappointed? Very much so.
So earlier today, John Kasich did an interview where he basically said that AOC is a small part of the Democratic Party and that, he pays her no attention or no mind. Jaria, what does that make you feel as a young Black woman in this country for this white man to say, here is this woman of color she's just a small thing that we don't have to pay attention to. And then to be ushered in at your convention to deliver a primetime speech?
I think it follows the narrative of how most women of color feel. We're not seen, we're not valued, we're not respected. I think that's the main thing. Like from Senator Harris being called a nasty woman to his comments about AOC, it's just being respected as an individual and not being on the same playing field. And while we're on the topic of women, and since Mariah left, I'm the only woman left on this panel.
Yes.
The fact that he pointed out that Joe Biden is, I think he said, the person for men and women. And y'all know Joe Biden had that scandal period where like those pictures came out where he was like inappropriately touching women and that whole thing. And for another white man to say, he's the person for women.
Yeah.
That's the message that women want.
No.
So that one really stuck out to me because I was just like, that's not going to capture the vote of women and especially women of color.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor.
Man, you know, this was a mistake. Like, I don't know who made this decision. Like, I don't know, you know, if they vetted his speech before he gave it.
There were some, so they did.
Oh.
The interview that came out earlier today had remnants of the speech. I didn't know it was going to be this freaking, you know.
Well, okay, so yeah, like, you know, I know we're in a pandemic and but somebody needs to lose their job because, like, what? Like, what?
I mean, it's the Joe Biden won't be pushed around and moved to the left. And when literally last week, what did Fox News say? Kamala Harris was going to push Joe Biden to the left.
It's kind of like, I mean, I can't even formulate. I just don't know why we let this, like, was this Tom Perez's decision? Was this Joe's decision? I don't know, but it was bad. I mean, like, I get what you were trying to do, but no.
But it didn't happen.
This is obviously not the time to be.
Eli, there were progressives that are winning bold elections around this country that could have fit into that slot. Who would you have wanted to listen to other than John freaking Kasich?
I mean, Cori Bush would have been a great addition to this. I mean, and that's not even me digging deep in my brain to figure out like who. I mean, and then AOC is getting like a minute to speak.
1 minute.
What am I gonna do? Be surprised? I'm not. Like, if anything, this little speech that we got from John Kasich just kind of solidified the fact that he's probably more politically aligned than Joe Biden is in the left wing of the Democratic Party ever. So I mean, it's disheartening to see, and I think he probably confirmed what a lot of us already knew, kind of the direction that we were heading towards. But it still doesn't make it any easier to hear.
Because it's like, damn, we knew it, but now we know it.
Right, because you just said it.
Yeah, we really know this. You know, I would have loved to hear on this first night, you know, we the people, I would have loved to hear from Representatives Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and, you know, Ayanna Pressley. I mean, we the people. That would have... We the people, when it was created, was for the white man that John Kasich is. I'm confused. When has it ever not been we the people for him? I mean, really. And this goes back to something that I think we've all maybe talked about before. One thing that's unavoidable is the Democratic Party's commitment to white supremacy. The subtle white supremacy, right? The something that someone like John Kasich, who pushed policies that were disadvantageous to Black people, would come and give this convention speech. So it's a good thing, right? If Kamala Harris and the rest of the progressive party or progressive wing of the party pushes Joe Biden to the left, right? What do you think?
Definitely.
So what are these radical issues that people are like, you know, are so left we can't even think about? You know, is it people should have health care? And if it is, why does that, you know, what are the issues that you think that Trump is going to frame as the most radical of Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and the entire Democratic Party?
For one, I think the fact that Kamala Harris is leading his VP pick is going to be seen as like super left. When Eli mentioned Cori Bush being, you know, a better person, people might have taken that as, oh, there's too many Black women speaking for Joe Biden. Like, that's seen as too progressive, when it's just like, if it's a white man, it's not really seen that way. So,
yeah. Anybody else?
He's definitely going to use the issue of immigration. That has been something that from day one from that administration has been the most. I can't even come up with a word.
Before he was even
as
elected,
negative.
right? We're gonna
Before
ban,
he was even elected,
you know, Muslim folks from coming to the country.
He's definitely going to use that. And what he's also going to use, because one thing I will say, whether you like it or not, that Trump comms team be working. That Trump comms team.
His digital director did something with campaigns in 2016 that had never been done before, right? Barack Obama was the first person to use like social media really to engage a political electorate.
Mm-hmm.
Donald Trump and his Dan Gianelli or something, that could not be his wrong, but it's something like that, completely ran with it. And, you know, Tim, as an elected official, you could do your part every single day, you know, but if there was someone in your government or in your city that just tweeted falsehoods about you every day, every minute, and that's all people listen to, how do you combat that? Right? Like, as Russell just said, the Trump communications machine is out here inundating with false information. How do we rise above that? What do we do?
I mean, we have to try to educate, but like, you know, the old folks say, a lie will travel faster than the truth will.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard. I mean, it's, you know, I honestly don't know how we combat it. I mean, it's kind of, you know, it's so out of left field. You don't expect an elected official to, I mean, you know, a lot of people lie, but you don't expect them to just blatantly tell untruths. Like, like I can't even fathom getting on Twitter and doing the things that Donald Trump does. Like, I would be out on my butt quick if I tried it. And, you know, it's just disrespectful to everybody, whether they voted for you or not.
So, Eli, what do you say to this framing? Because it's happened a few times, and I'm sure right now Amy Klobuchar is speaking, and I don't care to listen to only Amy Klobuchar. Does everybody agree? Everybody, we're there? All right. As soon as Michelle pops up, we'll throw her on. But, you know, Eli, how do we frame this work as the right thing to do when for decades, U.S. domestic and foreign policy has been centered on the United States being the shining beacon of hope, and any place, you know, for example, like Venezuela or Cuba that has socialist governments that, of course, are wrong, you know, do bad things, but they take care of their people. They're framed as horrible, and that fits into our domestic politics, right? So that's why people like AOC, Representative Omar, they're completely torn apart because they're seen as some, you know, global leftists, right? Eli, in your work as an activist on the ground at Texas State, but then your educational background, what does this moment say in this historical context about capitalism, socialism, and taking care of people? If that wasn't too complicated.
No, yeah, I got it. And interestingly enough that you would ask that question, because I recently wrote a paper about something like this, or for my summer 2 course. But we think of, okay, what's the fear of these left-leaning policies, and how that can be the antithesis of capitalism, how that comes in conflict with capitalism. I mean, you looked at, like, during the Cold War period in Latin America, and the role the U.S. had there. Like, we would so easily be like, oh, these are communist regimes that need to be overthrown. And most of the time, the leaders weren't communists. They were just socialists or self-proclaimed Marxists or whatever you want to call it. But, like, they weren't epitomizing any sort of communism. But what they were doing is they were getting in the way of imperialism and transnational capitalism as pushed by the United States. So when we have these conversations and use these buzzwords, like, if I am the judge, jury, and executioner, and, like, you're a communist, you're a radical leftist, and then people are going to hear that and go with it, that leaves no room for any sort of, like, discussion or any sort of well, what is it about this that we hate so much? And I'm not getting up here like advocating for communism at all. I just want us to have the conversation of like, everything is not as it seems on some Wizards of Waverly Place type stuff. Like there are things that we completely just like throw the conversation to the side because people are afraid of what they think it'll turn into. And what we're afraid of is that combating against capitalism in the United States and our own hegemony abroad and the transnational capitalist class.
Yeah, because, so back to the work that Russell and I do. James Baldwin was this person who loved America enough to stand in constant critique. One of the things that Kasich has said and a few other people have said is that we have to transcend party right now. We got to think of the nation. For y'all, for us who have navigated this world as Black people and many intersecting identities, right? Tim is a veteran, Jari is a woman, and us as queer folk. This country, has it ever made us feel like this is our home enough to fight for it? How do we navigate that? Because for me, it was the passing of C.T. Vivian and John Lewis that quickly got me back together, that said, I haven't paid my due yet. You know, that's why I'm fighting for this. Because it may not be a country that makes me feel like I'm supposed to be here now, but it will for my kids, right? So do y'all battle those feelings? And if you do, how do you work through them? You know, and what would you tell folks, you know, especially as we're going into hearing the first Black first lady this nation has ever had make the case for Joe Biden?
There was something that John Kasich said about or actually it wasn't him, it was the moderator lady. She mentioned more perfect union. In my head, I was like, a more perfect union for who? Because it's definitely not any of us. And so I think my battle with it is more frustration because it never has been perfect for any person of color in this country. Whether it's the systems that are designed against us, whether it's the hoops that we have to jump through, the stigmas that we have to, deal with. It gets tiring and it's very frustrating and it's very easy to be like, I'm throwing in my towel. But like you said, Stefan, for me, it's the future. It's the children, it's the people who are going to be here past me. There's a quote, oh my gosh, I can't remember. It's from a congressman. And it says, our children are our messages to the future that we never get to see. And
Elijah Cummings.
Yes, okay. That is something that like I want framed in my future office because that is what's going to keep me going. And it's the truth because what we're going through right now, we may or may not see the benefits of it.
Sorry, I was muted. LOL. Anybody else?
I was gonna say. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I was gonna say that the work is not easy. It's never been easy. We're far away from it ever being easy. So it just needs to be done. And like, unfortunately, like that falls on our backs. And like the only other option is to kind of just like bow down to the will of our oppressors. And we can't do that. And so we have to keep reinvigorating our activism and figuring out new ways to motivate ourselves to get out there, to get civically engaged and do what needs to be done. But we come from a long line of generations that had to work hard, and like we just need to build on that work. And I don't know, it looks different for all different types of people, like what activism looks like, what civic engagement looks like, but we're so far away from Black liberation still that like we just can't afford to bend to the will.
You know, Tim, down in Alabama, the seat of the United States reckoning with its second original sin. How do you battle that?
You know, I like to, every year there's a reenactment of the Selma to Montgomery March. And every year for the last, I guess, 8 to 9 years I've gone. And to see those people who you don't read about in the history books, the Amelia Boyntons, all those people who just did simple things like feeding the marchers. Those people who risked, they didn't just do that, you know, ex nihilo. They did that out of an understanding that I may not be the person that's gonna march across the bridge, but I'm gonna do my part to progress us. Stefan, you know that I'm gonna have a baby girl in about a little over a month. And you know, when I think about where we are as a country, how if she were to be born, if she were an adult now, she wouldn't be making the same wages as a man, or how she could be, you know, abused and catcalled and you know, killed because she denied a man's advances. We got a long way to go. You know, even within our own community, if she's my color, she may grow up feeling that she's less than because her skin is darker. We got a long way to go, and I think that's kind of what pushes me, because the days get long.
Yeah.
And you know, sometimes it's just like, why the hell am I doing this? You know, like it's like you're fighting a battle that's unwinnable. But when I think about my daughter, and I think about, as Daria said, the generations to come, it gives me a little more push to make it through the day, and say, you know, one day we'll be where we need to be. I may not be here to see it. There's an old saying that, you know, we plant trees that we won't be able to enjoy the shade, and that's kind of how I'm pushing myself forward.
Russ, working for the oldest civil rights organization in the country. How do you do it?
It's one of the greatest honors, but it's also very frustrating at the same time. I love working for an organization that has so much historical, social, and political capital, and has really moved the trajectory of our country. But also working for an organization that has a lot of old leadership.
And I just want us to we're going to come back.
Of course.
We are confronting systemic racism and the enormous threat to our planet of climate change. And in the midst of all of this, we have a president who is not only incapable of addressing these crises, but is leading us down the path of authoritarianism. This election is the most important in the modern history of this country. In response to the unprecedented crises we face, we need an unprecedented response, a movement like never before of people who are prepared to stand up and fight for democracy and decency and against greed, oligarchy, and bigotry. And we need Joe Biden as our next president. Let me take this opportunity to say a word to the millions of people who supported my campaign this year and in 2016. My friends, thank you for your trust, your support, and the love you showed Jane, me, and our family. Together, we have moved this country in a bold new direction, showing that all of us, Black and white, Latino, Native American, Asian American, gay and straight, native born and immigrant, yearn for a nation based on the principles of justice, love, and compassion. Our campaign ended several months ago, but our movement continues and is getting stronger every day. Many of the ideas we fought for that just a few years ago were considered radical are now mainstream. But let us be clear. If Donald Trump is reelected, all the progress we have made will be in jeopardy. At its most basic, this election is about preserving our democracy. During this president's term, the unthinkable has become normal. He has tried to prevent people from voting, undermined the U.S. Postal Service, deployed the military and federal agents against peaceful protesters, threatened to delay the election, and suggested that he will not leave office if he loses. This is not normal, and we must never treat it like it is. Under this administration, authoritarianism has taken root in our country. I and my family, and many of yours, know the insidious way authoritarianism destroys democracy, decency, and humanity. As long as I am here, I will work with progressives, with moderates, and yes, with conservatives to preserve this nation from a threat that so many of our heroes fought and died to defeat. This president is not just a threat to our democracy, but by rejecting science, he has put our lives and health in jeopardy. Trump has attacked doctors and scientists trying to protect us from the pandemic, while refusing to take strong action to produce the masks, gowns, and gloves our healthcare workers desperately need. Nero fiddled while Rome burned. Trump golfs. His actions fanned this pandemic, resulting in over 170,000 deaths and a nation still unprepared to protect its people. Furthermore, Trump's negligence has exacerbated the economic crisis we are now experiencing. Since this pandemic began, over 30 million people have lost their jobs, and many have lost their health insurance. Millions of working families are wondering how they will feed their kids, and they're worried that they will be evicted from their homes. And how has Trump responded? Instead of maintaining the $600 a week unemployment supplement that workers were receiving and the $1,200 emergency checks that many of you received, instead of helping small businesses, Trump concocted fraudulent executive orders that do virtually nothing to address the crisis while threatening the very future of Social Security and Medicare. But the truth is that even before Trump's negligent response to this pandemic, too many hardworking families have been caught on an economic treadmill with no hope of ever getting ahead. Together, we must build a nation that is more equitable, more compassionate, and more inclusive. I know that Joe Biden will begin that fight on day one. Let me offer you just a few examples of how Joe will move us forward. Joe supports raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. This will give 40 million workers a pay raise and push the wage scale up for everyone else. Joe will also make it easier for workers to join unions, create 12 weeks of paid family leave, fund universal pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds, and make childcare affordable for millions of families. Joe will rebuild our crumbling infrastructure and fight the threat of climate change by transitioning us to 100% clean electricity over the next 15 years. These initiatives will create millions of good-paying jobs all across our country. As you know, we are the only industrialized nation not to guarantee health care for all people. While Joe and I disagree on the best path to get universal coverage, he has a plan that will greatly expand health care and cut the cost of prescription drugs. Further, He will lower the eligibility age of Medicare from 65 down to 60. To help reform our broken criminal justice system, Joe will end private prisons and detention centers, cash bail, and the school to prison pipeline. And to heal the soul of our nation, Joe Biden will end the hate and division Trump has created. He will stop the demonization of immigrants, the coddling of white nationalists, the racist dog whistling, the religious bigotry, and the ugly attacks on women. My friends, I say to you, to everyone who supported other candidates in the primary, and to those who may have voted for Donald Trump in the last election, the future of our democracy is at stake. The future of our economy is at stake. The future of our planet is at stake. We must come together, defeat Donald Trump, and elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as our next president and vice president. My friends, the price of failure is just too great to imagine. Thank you.
What are our thoughts? This is okay. Hold on, let me show you guys what's. We'll keep this up for the rest of the night. So what are our thoughts? Eli, let's go to you first. How are you feeling?
Well, y'all know I love me some Bernie Sanders, absolutely. I think he epitomizes being a servant leader. He wants what's best for the people, even if, regardless of what that means for his own political standing. And so after him being strong-armed by the Democratic Party for how many years, and now he is taking a step back and is throwing his support behind Joe Biden because he knows right now there are very pressing issues that we need to get figured out and resolved. And he's doing the work towards that. He understands that right now we're undergoing democratic decay in this country. We're in the middle of a pandemic, A, B, C, and D. And the great thing is Joe Biden has shown to be receptive to working with Bernie Sanders. A lot of the things that he mentioned at the end of his speech, raising the minimum wage, pushing him to the left a little bit on healthcare, ending federal or private prisons. These are things that Bernie Sanders' campaign really started the conversation on. And while they won't be the one to be able to tack that onto their own platform, it's because the people can now enjoy these things, and that's okay with it. So I was happy with it.
Daria, how you feeling?
I feel like he spoke very well and covered, the hot topics that us younger voters or listeners might be waiting to hear.
Let's see, Michelle Obama.
Everyone's feeling it in different ways. And I know a lot of folks are reluctant to tune into a political convention right now or to politics in general. Believe me, I get that. But I am here tonight because I love this country with all my heart. And it pains me to see so many people hurting. I've met so many of you. I've heard your stories. And through you, I have seen this country's promise. And thanks to so many who came before me, thanks to their toil and sweat and blood, I've been able to live that promise myself. That's the story of America. All those folks who sacrificed and overcame so much in their own times because they wanted something more, something better for their kids. There's a lot of beauty in that story. There's a lot of pain in it too. A lot of struggle and injustice and work left to do. And who we choose as our president in this election will determine whether or not we honor that struggle and chip away at that injustice and keep alive the very possibility of finishing that work. I am one of a handful of people living today who have seen firsthand the immense weight and awesome power of the presidency. And let me once again tell you this: The job is hard. It requires clear-headed judgment, a mastery of complex and competing issues, a devotion to facts and history, a moral compass, and an ability to listen, and an abiding belief that each of the 330 million lives in this country has meaning and worth. A president's words have the power to move markets. They can start wars or broker peace. They can summon our better angels or awaken our worst instincts. You simply cannot fake your way through this job. As I've said before, being president doesn't change who you are. It reveals who you are. Well, a presidential election can reveal who we are too. And 4 years ago, too many people chose to believe that their votes didn't matter. Maybe they were fed up. Maybe they thought the outcome wouldn't be close. Maybe the barriers felt too steep, whatever the reason. In the end, those choices sent someone to the Oval Office who lost the national popular vote by nearly 3 million votes. In one of the states that determined the outcome, the winning margin averaged out to just 2 votes per precinct. 2 votes. And we've all been living with the consequences. When my husband left office with Joe Biden at his side, we had a record-breaking stretch of job creation. We'd secured the right to health care for 20 million people. We were respected around the world, rallying our allies to confront climate change. And our leaders had worked hand in hand with scientists to help prevent an Ebola outbreak from becoming a global pandemic. 4 years later, the state of this nation is very different. More than 150,000 people have died, and our economy is in shambles because of a virus that this president downplayed for too long. It has left millions of people jobless. Too many have lost their health care. Too many are struggling to take care of basic necessities like food and rent. Too many communities have been left in the lurch to grapple with whether and how to open our schools safely. Internationally, we've turned our back, not just on agreements forged by my husband, but on alliances championed by presidents like Reagan and Eisenhower. And here at home, as George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and a never-ending list of innocent people of color continue to be murdered, stating the simple fact that a Black life matters is still met with derision from the nation's highest office. Because whenever we look to this White House for some leadership or consolation or any semblance of steadiness, what we get instead is chaos, division, and a total and utter lack of empathy. Empathy, that's something I've been thinking a lot about lately. The ability to walk in someone else's shoes. The recognition that someone else's experience has value too. Most of us practice this without a second thought. If we see someone suffering or struggling, we don't stand in judgment, we reach out. Because there, but for the grace of God, go I. It is not a hard concept to grasp. It's what we teach our children. And like so many of you, Barack and I have tried our best to instill in our girls a strong moral foundation to carry forward the values that our parents and grandparents poured into us. But right now, kids in this country are seeing what happens when we stop requiring empathy of one another. They're looking around wondering if we've been lying to them this whole time about who we are and what we truly value. They see people shouting in grocery stores, unwilling to wear a mask to keep us all safe. They see people calling the police on folks minding their own business just because of the color of their skin. They see an entitlement that says only certain people belong here, that greed is good and winning is everything, because as long as you come out on top, it doesn't matter what happens to everyone else. And they see what happens when that lack of empathy is ginned up into outright disdain. They see our leaders labeling fellow citizens enemies of the state while emboldening torch-bearing white supremacists. They watch in horror as children are torn from their families and thrown into cages, and pepper spray and rubber bullets are used on peaceful protesters for a photo op. Sadly, this is the America that is on display for the next generation. A nation that's underperforming not simply on matters of policy, but on matters of character. And that's not just disappointing, it's downright infuriating. Because I know the goodness and the grace that is out there in households and neighborhoods all across this nation. And I know that regardless of our race, age, religion, or politics, when we close out the noise and the fear and truly open our hearts, we know that what's going on in this country is just not right. This is not who we want to be. So what do we do now? What's our strategy? Over the past 4 years, a lot of people have asked me, when others are going so low, does going high still really work? My answer, going high is the only thing that works. Because when we go low, when we use those same tactics of degrading and dehumanizing others, we just become part of the ugly noise that's drowning out everything else. We degrade ourselves. We degrade the very causes for which we fight. But let's be clear. Going high does not mean putting on a smile and saying nice things when confronted by viciousness and cruelty. Going high means taking the harder path. It means scraping and clawing our way to that mountaintop. Going high means standing fierce against hatred while remembering that we are one nation under God. And if we want to survive, we've got to find a way to live together and work together across our differences. And going high means unlocking the shackles of lies and mistrust with the only thing that can truly set us free, the cold, hard truth. So let me be as honest and clear as I possibly can. Donald Trump is the wrong president for our country. He has had more than enough time to prove that he can do the job, but he is clearly in over his head. He cannot meet this moment. He simply cannot be who we need him to be for us. It is what it is. Now, I understand that my message won't be heard by some people. We live in a nation that is deeply divided, and I am a Black woman speaking at the Democratic Convention. But enough of you know me by now. You know that I tell you exactly what I'm feeling. You know I hate politics, but you also know that I care about this nation. You know how much I care about all of our children. So if you take one thing from my words tonight, it is this. If you think things cannot possibly get worse, trust me, they can and they will if we don't make a change in this election. If we have any hope of ending this chaos, we have got to vote for Joe Biden like our lives depend on it. I know Joe. He is a profoundly decent man, guided by faith. He was a terrific vice president. He knows what it takes to rescue an economy, beat back a pandemic, and lead our country. And he listens. He will tell the truth and trust science. He will make smart plans and manage a good team. And he will govern as someone who's lived a life that the rest of us can recognize. When he was a kid, Joe's father lost his job. When he was a young senator, Joe lost his wife and his baby daughter. And when he was vice president, he lost his beloved son. So Joe knows the anguish of sitting at a table with an empty chair, which is why he gives his time so freely to grieving parents. Joe knows what it's like to struggle, which is why he gives his personal phone number to kids overcoming a stutter of their own. His life is a testament to getting back up. And he is going to channel that same grit and passion to pick us all up, to help us heal and guide us forward. Now, Joe is not perfect, and he'd be the first to tell you that. But there is no perfect candidate, no perfect president. And his ability to learn and grow, we find in that the kind of humility and maturity that so many of us yearn for right now. Because Joe Biden has served this nation his entire life without ever losing sight of who he is. But more than that, he has never lost sight of who we are, all of us. Joe Biden wants all of our kids to go to a good school, see a doctor when they're sick, live on a healthy planet. And he's got plans to make all of that happen. Joe Biden wants all of our kids, no matter what they look like, to be able to walk out the door without worrying about being harassed or arrested or killed. He wants all of our kids to be able to go to a movie or a math class without being afraid of getting shot. He wants all our kids to grow up with leaders who won't just serve themselves and their wealthy peers, but will provide a safety net for people facing hard times. And if we want a chance to pursue any of these goals, any of these most basic requirements for a functioning society, we have to vote for Joe Biden in numbers that cannot be ignored. Because right now, folks who know they cannot win fair and square at the ballot box are doing everything they can to stop us from voting. They're closing down polling places in minority neighborhoods. They're purging voter rolls. They're sending people out to intimidate voters, and they're lying about the security of our ballots. These tactics are not new. But this is not the time to withhold our votes in protest or play games with candidates who have no chance of winning. We have got to vote like we did in 2008 and 2012. We've got to show up with the same level of passion and hope for Joe Biden. We've got to vote early, in person if we can. We've got to request our mail-in ballots right now, tonight, and send them back immediately, and follow up to make sure they're received, and then make sure our friends and families do the same. We have got to grab our comfortable shoes, put on our masks, pack a brown bag dinner, and maybe breakfast too, because we've got to be willing to stand in line all night if we have to. Look, we have already sacrificed so much this year. So many of you are already going that extra mile. Even when you're exhausted, you're mustering up unimaginable courage to put on those scrubs and give our loved ones a fighting chance. Even when you're anxious, you're delivering those packages, stocking those shelves, and doing all that essential work so that all of us can keep moving forward. Even when it all feels so overwhelming, working parents are somehow piecing it all together without childcare. Teachers are getting creative so that our kids can still learn and grow. Our young people are desperately fighting to pursue their dreams. And when the horrors of systemic racism shook our country and our consciences, millions of Americans of every age, every background rose up to march for each other, crying out for justice and progress. This is who we still are. Compassionate, resilient, decent people whose fortunes are bound up with one another. And it is well past time for our leaders to once again reflect our truth. So it is up to us to add our voices and our votes to the chorus of history, echoing heroes like John Lewis, who said, "When you see something that is not right, you must say something. You must do something." That is the truest form of empathy. Not just feeling, but doing. Not just for ourselves or our kids, but for everyone, for all our kids. And if we want to keep the possibility of progress alive in our time, if we want to be able to look our children in the eye after this election, we have got to reassert our place in American history. And we have got to do everything we can to elect my friend Joe Biden as the next president of the United States. Thank you all. God bless.
So how do y'all feel? Jaria, you want to go first?
I don't know who planned the first part of tonight's convention, but they need another. Yeah, because the second part, I feel like they were very strategic about having Bernie Sanders have everybody fired up, those who are really, angry and frustrated about what's going on. And we all know Bernie supporters love Bernie, and some of them might not really want to vote for Joe Biden, but he kept this narrative of together, like together we can do this, together we can, change the policies that we care about. And then you follow that with Michelle Obama, who I felt like the whole time she was talking, I was getting like a pep talk from my mom. Like, I'm tired of seeing how the world is going. I'm frustrated. I just want to cry. Like, I can't take this anymore. And here she comes at the end to be like, nope, you're going to go out there and you're going to vote and you're going to change the world and everything is going to, start getting back on track and you're going to be okay. And I think for them to end on that note it lifts people's spirits a little bit. So I think they were very intentional with the latter half of tonight's speakers, because the first half, they could have saved them. But, I think they ended on a very good note.
Eli, the former First Lady said, going high is the only thing that works. She brought that sentiment up in 2016, when they go low, we go high. And everyone thought that she was kind of saying be passive. And I appreciate that this year, she decided, let me clarify. I'm not saying, to be passive. What did that mean to you? That going high is the only thing that works, and it doesn't mean that we're passive.
Right. So she was saying that sometimes going high is taking like whether it be like the road less traveled or it's like the tougher road. I think she's absolutely right in that regard. As long as we understand that going high doesn't mean that what was I gonna say? Just that, like you were saying, I'm very glad that she was able to clear that up this year with what going high really does mean. It doesn't mean we should be submissive at all. It just means we have to work a little bit harder to get accomplished what we want to get accomplished. So I did appreciate that also.
Mr. Mayor, she talks about Joe Biden is the guy to help us all get back on our feet. Do you believe as an elected official that when something happens in your city, that you would be able to count on a Joe Biden to help you out?
You know, I actually do. I have had conversations with him about small cities like mine, we're a city of just over 15,000. And we've talked about how the federal government can help in this current crisis that we're facing. And with the current president, we've reached out, no response. We've even reached out to our governor, no response, but that's neither here nor there.
KI.
Yeah. So yeah, I think he would. I think he would do everything in his power to help local municipalities.
So Russell, last question of the night before we close this out. You know, she talked about we are one nation under God. Very similar to that, different background, one destiny. She talked about the goodness and grace of America. What did it mean for you, even in this virtual format, to see this campaigner-in-chief make the case for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris?
I think Michelle Obama did a very good job at having a well-complemented speech that was very supportive of the ticket, but also saying things alluding to Joe Biden's not perfect. It was a very well-complemented speech. I think, much like Jaria said, it felt very much like an inspiring pep talk. You felt inspired. Rather you like Joe or Kamala or not, I feel as though any person listening to the speech after would be like, okay, I'm gonna give him a chance just because Auntie Shell told me to. And I do think that is the reason why she was kept to the end, because people know that there is something about Michelle Obama that provides a sense of safety, provides a sense of love, and so provides what Black women do for the world: love, safety, care, that sense of warm goodness. That's what they knew. The one nation under God thing, I know that I was checking Twitter while it was going on, and I saw some folks having some commentary about the one nation under God piece, and I knew that was coming. But when I looked at it as a way of her saying, like, look, y'all, they not finna save us. They have no desire to save us. They never had any desire to even care. What we have to do as a collective is to work together in order to get at least some type of progress so that we can begin to build something that works for us, or to begin working for us. So when I heard one nation under God, that's how I digested it from her. And don't get me wrong, I have a lot of, commentary about how I feel the Obamas, aligned to a lot of establishment,
absolutely
Black bourgeois things. I have a lot of, commentary about that, but I also have a lot of things, and I'll say this for lack of a better term. Michelle Obama talked her shit tonight very eloquently.
She did. I am a Black woman.
The line that stuck out to me the most, I'm a Black woman. That was one that was very powerful. And the other one, when she said, a person who know they cannot win this election, or I forgot what the exact quote was. She very eloquently gave very, very aggressive criticism to all of the things that we've been saying. She, out of anyone, made the best case for Joe Biden this evening, that I believe that both young Black folks, and older Black folks could both relate to.
I absolutely agree. Just like she did in 2016. She gave that speech that talked about you need to be careful what your children will grow up seeing. That was what that election is about. Mm-hmm. And now, Tim, you're bringing in a beautiful girl in a few months. I hope that conversations like that we had tonight on this panel happen all across the country, so we can make sure that the world that we build is a place for young Black girls. But it's that place that builds us up and it doesn't tear us down. But the only way that we do that is through community conversations. And so I want to thank you guys so much for being my first panel. I was incredibly nervous because I got all of this technology set up that it could go the wrong way. But you guys helped us see that there is an America worth fighting for. And so in closing, from each one of you, what is something that you are looking forward to? That could be in an election, in whatever, but what are you excited about for this country right now?
Yeah, I'll go first. I think staying with tonight's theme, I'm excited for a real We the People that's representative of Black, white, brown, different physical ability, queer, straight, a real We the People. And when that day comes, hopefully I'm here to see it. That'll be really, truly amazing.
Sorry.
I think for me, I'm excited about the movement that's happening and how many people that were not involved in politics or aware of what's going on are now informed and posting and rallying and all those things, because it's going to speak in volumes when we the people can be on one accord, and then we put in the elected officials, whether that's at the local level, national level, wherever. We elect those people once we as the people are on one accord, if that makes sense.
Press. You on mute, boo.
My bad. I think I have to agree with this notion of this movement that's building. For me, I think, and Stefan, you and I have had a very extensive conversations about this. There are conversations being had that I haven't really had before. This what some people may consider very radical, a conversation to where we can truly say, actually, life could happen without prison. Actually, life could happen to where we could see that everyone could literally go to the doctor and be healthy. Like, we're actually having these conversations and finding out that things can be realistic with this movement that we're building. And I think as we continue to have these conversations and we work as this collective to have them, and we bring in all of those experiences and perspective, even the ones that we don't agree with or necessarily understand, I think that is when we then begin to be we the people of diverse backgrounds who are coexisting, are trying to build a society for not only me, but for those around me and for those to come after me.
Absolutely. Eli, last word.
For us, I would say that I'm most excited about kind of uplifting that collective voice of those who have historically been voiceless and have been erased and things of that sort. Like, I'm excited to see what comes from this. I'm excited for engagement, and even more importantly, I'm excited to see genuine results.
Absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank all of you so much for tuning into the first night of the Power of the People Building a Better Future panel, brought to you by the W2AA Media Network. Join us back here tomorrow as we attack Joe Biden, former Attorney General Sally Yates, Chuck Schumer, John Kerry, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Lisa Blunt Rochester, and former President Bill Clinton. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Y'all have a good night. I hope that you guys stay connected with us throughout the entire week, but most importantly, I hope that y'all never stop fighting for the America that we all deserve. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you. Have a